Thank you so much. I'd just like to begin with offering my personal gratitude to the Institute and to you, Josh, for everything that you offer and holding this space for us. This morning, for me, morning, I guess for others of you, afternoon. So many of us are holding so much in this moment. And I want to acknowledge that this is a difficult moment for so many people, and also acknowledge that if we were to spend our time talking about the difficulty, that would be the extent of our time together. And so, of course, that is not the purpose of our being here, but to just acknowledge that we are walking through difficulties in many different ways. Many of us are holding difficult feelings as we walk into this space. So this is a container for those feelings, and they're welcome here. We're welcome to acknowledge them. I wanted to share today a piece of text. There is a source sheet that Rachel will share in the chat, and you're welcome to either access it by clicking on the link, or you can just stay with me and then access the text later. I'm going to be darting through a lot of text very quickly. So in our Parsha this week, we actually read something quite difficult, in fact, but it's related to Shabbat. And so it's very challenging, I think. We read that on 6 days work may be done, but on the seventh day you shall have a Sabbath of complete rest, holy to Adonai. All of that sounds so great. And then this little phrase on the end, whoever does any work on it shall be put to death. All of a sudden takes on a completely different resonance. What I wanted to do for us today is actually to reframe that a little bit, and even with the knowledge that it may not have been the intent, for us to look at that as what happens when we do not practice Shabbat in our lives in some way, shape, or form, when we do not rest, restore, refresh, renew ourselves. We commit to our own spiritual death. And those of us who are here today, my guess is that most of us are very aware of that. It's why we make space for sitting in our lives to have, even during the weekday, a moment of rest, a moment of Shabbat, a moment of refreshing, of centering, of coming back to self. So Josh mentioned that we've left Purim and are headed to Pesach. And so I'm bouncing us a little bit forward to look at Parshat Bo. And this is a text that comes from Rabbi Yitzchak Zelig Morgenstern of Sokolov. So he, and the reason that I'm bouncing us forward is that I think this is the antidote. The antidote to that idea of spiritual death that we is a possibility for us if we're not mindful about setting aside time to be present and to refresh ourselves. So Yitzchak Zelig Morgenstern of Sokolov is commenting on this phrase, and the Lord said to Moses, I will bring but one more plague upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt, and after that he shall let you go from here. Indeed, when he lets you go, he will drive you out of here, one and all. And he says, no good or friendly act ever goes to waste. It roots love in the heart. Love, in turn, creates a connection. If the people of Israel had left Egypt due to the goodwill and positive intention of Pharaoh, a sense of gratitude for this kindness would have remained in their hearts, a ray of connection and a hidden sense of interest in the good of Egypt. It was therefore necessary that Pharaoh banish them. He will drive you out of here, one and all, in order to break any spiritual or emotional connection to Egypt or the Egyptians. So I want to turn his teaching on its head a little bit and focus on the first part of what he said. And that is this idea of a good or friendly act never going to waste, and rooting love in the heart, and love in turn creating connection. It's something that we can dig deeply into as we practice this idea of refreshing ourselves. So I'll ask you to just take a deep breath in, let that breath go, find your sitting place, whatever that means for you. You can do a reset of your space if that's something that speaks to you in this time. If you'd like to, allowing your eyes to gently close. Finding a place of centering, whether that place is through the breath, or finding a centering spot in your own physicality. And inviting a sense of refreshment to the breath, to the body. Noting that this time has been set aside for you to take care of yourself. And in this moment, if there's any part of yourself that needs a checking in with and a gentleness, a kindness offered, just take a moment to do that, whether it's a physical situation that needs to be addressed, or an emotional space, place where you can offer yourself a hug. Stay with the breath for a few moments. No good or friendly act ever goes to waste. It roots love in the heart. Love in turn creates connection. Picture a good or friendly act that you have done in the past number of days, or that's been done toward you in the past number of days. And you can just take a moment to imagine this act itself rooting in the hearts of both the doer and the receiver. Imagine it planting itself in the heart and taking root. And then you can imagine perhaps a thread connecting the hearts of the one who did the act and the one who received the act of friendship, connecting the two infinitely throughout time, throughout space. And imagine then the multiplicity of threads connecting these two to others and so on, creating a vast network of interconnected kindness and goodness throughout time and space. We're going to sit quietly with that in our minds for the next 8 minutes. And you can imagine that interconnected web of threads of goodness, connecting yourself to others and others to yourself. Just picture it multiplying infinitely throughout time and space. This is a poem called Watching My Friend Pretend Her Heart Is Not Breaking. It's written by Rosemary Watola Tromer. On Earth, just a teaspoon of neutron star would weigh 6 billion tons. 6 billion tons equals the collective weight of every animal on Earth, including the insects, times 3. 6 billion tons sounds impossible until I consider how it is to swallow grief. Just a teaspoon, and one might as well have consumed a neutron star. How dense it is. How it carries inside it the memory of a collapse. How difficult it is to move then. How impossible to believe that anything could lift that weight. There are many reasons to treat each other with great tenderness. One is the sheer miracle that we are here together on a planet surrounded by dying stars. One is that we cannot see what anyone else has swallowed.
Thank you, Kerith, for your teaching. Thank you, everybody, for your practice. We're going to have a chance now in a few moments to have a conversation about the teaching and the practice. But right now, we also have an opportunity for those who are remembering loved ones to recite Mourner's Kaddish together. If you'd like, in the chat, you can put in the name of somebody who you are remembering today. And so we'll open that up. And then if you want to unmute, you are welcome to join me in reciting the Mourner's Kaddish. Thanks to Rachel for putting the text on the screen. So you're welcome to unmute and we can recite Mourner's Kaddish together. Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shmei Rabbah, V'yalma, Shivutei, V'yamlich Malchutei, V'chayechon, V'yamechon, V'chayei, V'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, U'bizman Kariv, V'imru, Amen. Hey, Shmei Rabbah, Baruch Le'almei, Baruch V'yishtabach, V'yitfar, V'yitramam, V'yitnaseh, V'yithadar, V'yitale, V'yithalal, Shnei Dekud Shavrihu, Ela, Birchata, V'shirata, Tishbechata, V'nechamata, V'amiran B'alma, V'imru, Amen. Yishmama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chayim Aleinu, Yisrael V'imru, Amen.
Shalom
Shalom Bimroma, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu, V'al Kol Yisrael, V'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel.
Amen.
Amen.
I want her to repeat the name of that poem.
Okay. So we Great. All right. So we'll bring Kerith back up. Okay. Terrific. Thank you. And if you need to lead us, farewell. Hope you'll join us again. But have an opportunity now to have a little conversation. Um, and I wonder, and just let me also say that if you have a question, if you can put it in the chat as question in all caps, that's really helpful. I know, Kerith, people want to know the name of the melody you were singing, the nigun you were singing at the end. So you can probably share that'll take care of half the questions right now, is my guess. So yeah, if you want to share that with us, what was that?
Yeah,
It was
so
beautiful.
it's a tune. It's like my nigun that I like sing to comfort I did not write this melody, but it's my personal like comforting nigun for myself. But it's actually like a tune by the jazz pianist Abdullah Ibrahim, who's from South Africa,
Hmm.
and it's called. I'll find it. Um, I'll find it while we look at other questions, and then I'll tell you. It's called Maraba Blue.
Mirabalu. Okay.
Maraba Blue. Yes.
Okay. Fantastic. Wonderful. So, just we might want to post the link to the source sheet again, Rachel. There was a question from Sheer about the name of the poem by Rosemary Trummer. So we'll put that in there too. There we go. So if you click on there, you should get that info. Great. So you, Kerith, I just noticed, like, you know, as soon as you mentioned the Shabbat pasuk, I was like, oh, he's going to go there, because as you noted, most of our other verses having to do with Shabbat, we have a lot of them in these Torah
Yes.
portions about the Mishkan, but this one has and if you don't, you'll be put to death.
Yeah.
Um, and so I admired your courage in doing that, because I think oftentimes we kind of, you know, we shy away from that stuff.
Yeah.
And I wonder, just to hear more about your choice of wanting to engage that and sort of reinterpret it in the way that you did, and yeah, just give you more of a chance to reflect on that.
Thank you, Josh. I think so. So I'll frame this in this way. Um, as a cantor, I will often have parents whose children are assigned a Torah portion, which for some reason they have like a problem with because they think that the text is not G-rated enough for their 12-year-old, right?
Mhm.
And they'll come and say, "How could you give this to my child? You know, it's about menstruation, or it's about, or
Right.
any of these things." And so very early on in my career, it occurred to me like our text is has everything in it, and we need to accept all of it in order to move forward with it. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to be out there like saying that people should be stoned for not observing Shabbat. That's so I need to figure out what is my way into this. I don't want to just pretend that it's not there, because that's not honest. It's not authentic, and it doesn't feel full of integrity to me. So I need to engage with these texts and find a way that they can make sense for me to have access to them, and for others in who come to me as their teacher, to pretend that these texts don't exist, to shy away from them, to not fully engage with them. And I know that in the very short time we have, I couldn't spend time on the pashat of that text, right? That
Mhm.
that if I wanted to do a teaching, I needed to move straight to it. But there's difficulty there, and to me, in this moment when our lives are so full of the difficult is a time to recognize that our guiding text, the Torah, is also full of difficulty and full of beauty.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I appreciate it. I'd be curious for folks who are with us, this teaching about, what is spiritual death, and then of course, what is spiritual life? What is, what's spiritual vitality, and how that plays for you, what you experience coming up. I'd be really curious about also. And you took us through this teaching from the Torah. This is on the source sheet about love create excuse me. Excuse me. Okay.
Isn't it?
Thank you. But that love creates connection, right? And that you were that and I love the idea that any act of love really is about creating that connection, that these are invitations to connection, which for me, brought up a teaching that we're very fond of here at IJS about the meaning of mitzvah, that every mitzvah is, an opportunity. Mitzvah just really means creating opportunities for connectedness, for connection. And I wonder how that's showing up for you now. You may mention at the beginning and now about the difficulties of uh, that so many are going through, and your community I know has been struggling with the aftermath of the fires in
Mhm.
January and all the displacement. Um, yeah, how are you sort of experiencing that in your own life and practice?
Thank you for asking. And yes, my community was very impacted by the fires. We have over 70 families who lost their homes, many more displaced and still displaced. And this is going to be going to be a marathon for Los Angeles. It's not over, and we're dealing with the political upheaval that the rest of the country is dealing with as well in many ways. And then I also want to recognize that all of us are carrying our own personal burdens, whatever they may be, as we walk into this space. So so my response, which may be very different from other people's, and I want to just say that my response is my response, and whatever your response is, as long as it feels wholesome and it's helping you move forward, I want to honor that. My response has been to dig in as locally as I possibly can. So for me, in this particular moment, it really means helping the families in my community who are without housing, and that's what it means in my Jewish community right now and my Los Angeles community. But it's also made me reflect really deeply, and I think it's also about my particular time in life as well, about really taking the time to tend to close relationships. And we all live very, very busy lives, and sometimes we take for granted those close relationships that they will be there. And so for me, it's really been digging into taking care of family, taking care of friends, making sure that that they're okay, and tending to those relationships and building. And that's why this teaching speaks so strongly to me in this moment, that I feel very strongly the limitations of my power in this moment, as privileged as I am. And so doing everything I can to cultivate compassion and goodness in each interaction that I have locally is where I feel I can make the most impact.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you put it really beautifully. That's great. And I'd be curious for others. I mean, this has been an ongoing conversation, obviously, for months now for a lot of people, and on the set. So I'd be curious, for for folks in the who are participating with us, just to hear for yourself, how this teaching is showing up for you, and how what are quote unquote small, which are actually, as you're saying, as the Rosemary Trummer's poem is about, like, and they weigh as much as, like, billions of neutrons or whatever, or a neutron, whatever. They're very heavy. Is the point. Small
Very
things
heavy,
can be
yes.
extremely can have a lot of weight to them. It can have a lot of gravity. And so yes, I think there's some resonance here with the notion of limitations of power. Yeah, and recognizing the value of to connection. Absolutely. I'd love to hear more about the Rosemary Trummer poem, and what she's definitely become. She's in vogue these days. I feel like
Oh, really?
I'm reading. Oh
Okay.
yeah, I'm definitely. I'm teaching her. Other people. I feel like
That's right.
she's having a moment right now. Yeah, I'm curious what what you think about. If you wanted to translate the message of that poem for us a little bit, how you're
Yeah.
reading it.
So, I think on its face, that poem is about grief and loss, um, and like actual death, like a person who's going through grief because they've experienced the death of a loved one, right? So that's what's on the, like, surface, if you will. This poem goes deep really quickly, but that's what's on the surface of this poem. And for me, what's so challenging about this moment, and I think particularly for those of us who live in LA right now, is that we are experiencing a lot of grief and loss for the landscape. For, like, we have even on the beach, our marine animals are dying because of there's a lot of loss and grief that we're carrying here. Places that used to be a part of our everyday life are gone. So we're carrying that grief. But I also think about friends all over the country, and friends actually all over the world of mine, who are experiencing loss and grief right now in a multitude of ways, in terms of what their dreams have been for their own futures and the futures of their children, and how heavy that is for us to carry. So this poem just called to me for all of those reasons.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely. And I know that there are a couple messages from folks in Canada who are on here, and I was just with a bunch of Canadians this week, and who are feeling their own, a lot of heaviness, and everybody. I mean, like, everybody's got stuff, I think, that we're all carrying in one way or another. And so, and then seeing that the opportunity in that is
Yes.
to there's a lot of good work to do. There's a lot of good work to do, and it may actually help us to
Right.
not be distracted from, by things that maybe are, beyond our locus of control, and
Yeah.
focus on the things that we do
Yeah.
have control over.
And even while we're carrying that heaviness, as difficult as it is, we do have the ability to give and receive love. And it just, to me, that is the antidote. It's the only antidote that I know. And so I'm digging in deep.
Yeah, yeah. There was a question here about, what if you're having trouble with connection? And and that can take that question in a number of different ways. Yeah, well, I guess I'd invite you to comment on that first, and others. I mean, that you did, to respond to that in the chat.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you're not alone. I think that's the most important thing to note, is that we're living in a time where people are feeling loneliness very strongly. And so hopefully even just those words, "you're not alone," is an invitation to feel connection with others who are feeling disconnected. um, and know that we're in this together. I think there can be a multitude of ways of having difficulty with connection. We can have difficulty feeling connected to others who challenge us. That is. I know so many people who are having trouble with, family members or community members who are they're feeling challenged in that way, and that's an opportunity for practice, as difficult as it is. So hopefully if you don't have an established practice, maybe that's not your opportunity for practice. But for those of us who are showing up to this space who have an established practice, just remind ourselves that, Shaviti Adonai Lenegdi Tamid, that like in that thing that presents itself as against you, maybe God is there also. So that's I think that's one way to think about it. And then, I have a very close old dear friend, Ben Connolly, who's a Zen priest, who he wrote a book about Zen practice, Buddhist practice, and community. And oftentimes, I think sometimes when we think about Eastern traditions, we think about this idea of like being on one's own, a monastic sort of like self. And that's really not the case in any of these traditions. They tell us that we need to be together. And so even if we're having difficulty with connection, noticing that, paying close attention to it, offering kindness even to that statement of "I'm having difficulty," and then knowing that it's something to attend to, because we cannot walk through these moments alone. We need each other.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, and we can always bring it back to the Mishkan, the theme of this week, but that, and Moshe, and nobody can build the Mishkan on their own. Everybody has to be, it requires the contributions of everybody, and it requires people who are giving gifts that are from the heart, right? So everybody's heart who's moved, or actually everyone whose heart moves them, is actually the more careful translation of that. So sensing our hearts being moved, and together we're always building a Mishkan, including here in this space, right? That I think an analog to something that I know Mark likes to talk about. Shabbat is not only available every 7 days or every, but it's available every 7 hours or 7 minutes or 7 moments. And just as Shabbat is available in that way, Shabbat is Shabbat Kodesh, holiness and time. The Mikdash is holiness, is Mikdash Kodesh is holiness in space, and that's also available to us, right? And we're really just tapping into it, and I think that's kind of what we do here on a daily basis, is try to make make that virtual space from people stitching it together
I think
across
there's this
the continent.
Yeah, I think there's a third piece, and I mean, I haven't spent any time connecting this textually, Josh, but now you've provided an impetus for me to do that, which is which is the idea of holy relationship, right? And that's accessible to us, within our Jewish texts through the idea of marriage and through the Sfirot, but also, I'd like to dig in and find and spend some time thinking about where do we find some text to underpin the idea of holy community, holy connection between friends. It's so important for us.
Okay, well, and when you have that, you can come back here, and that'll be your next time. So that's a good segue. Kara, thank you so much for your teaching today, and thank you to Rachel for holding down our tech. Thanks to everybody for participating. If you want to save the chat, a lot of people like to do that. I know there's 3 little dots towards the top right of your chat bar, probably, and then you click on those and you have an opportunity to save the chat if you want to do that. We will be back here tomorrow, same time and channel. And until then, we wish you peace and blessings wherever you are, and look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.